So jumping right into this tutorial, we are starting with a circle. As we are learning to draw something for the first time, we break it down into shapes that we know. So we start with circles, squares, triangles, anything that's easy enough for us to draw before we go into getting the actual shape that we see. And we use these basic shapes as guiding lines. I have my reference photo up on the screen so you can see where and how I'm working on each section of the flower. I'm beginning with the petals in the center of the flower, and then that will dictate how big the rest of the petals are. And that technique works for this specific type of flower because there are so few petals. Whereas with other flowers that have more petals, I might start with the outside and work my way in just to contain the shape. But in this case, I start with the center petals because they will dictate how big I go with the other petals. I start with the outline of each of the petals before I move on to any type of details because I want to get that outer shape and size correct before moving on to any shading or any details. So here I'm just going over those lines that I want to keep that I think accurately capture the shape of each petal and making it a little more bold and a little more intentional. This way I know which lines I would like to keep and which lines I would like to erase. As always, it's best to draw very lightly. That way the lines that you don't want to keep will either just fade into the background and they're also easier to erase. Now you might notice that I'm using the eraser on the back of my pencil, and that's because I know that on this particular pencil the eraser is good. If you're using a regular like school pencil, HB pencil that has an eraser at the back of it, I don't recommend that you use that to erase your lines. And you probably know the reason why, but it's because those erasers are not usually very good. They usually leave like a pink stain or like really, it doesn't erase properly. So I don't recommend using those erasers, but use a white one that you trust. So now I'm marking out where the main features of the flowers are. So I'm paying attention to those yellow lines that go in the middle of the petals, and I'm paying attention to the direction of the lines in the petals themselves. You know how petals have those lines, similar to how our fingers have fingerprint lines. I'm paying attention to the direction that those go in. And in this case, I would say less is more. Sometimes when you add too many lines, it can become distracting to the overall flower and the overall look of the piece. So definitely be a little bit, not cautious, but a little bit less generous, a little stingy with your lines. Or should I say intentional? Definitely be intentional. Pay attention to what lines are working and what lines are not working. And don't be afraid to erase and then redraw. Now I've decided to draw with a mechanical pencil because the lead is very thin and very small and I wanted to create very fine lines. I would normally recommend drawing with a regular pencil that you could sharpen, a pencil of a variety of shades so you can get just a lot more depth to your piece. For this piece, I didn't want to be too fancy, I just wanted to show you the basics, but I think in the future when I draw flowers, I will definitely use a variety of pencil shades to get more contrast. And a high contrast piece is what we like to look at. Contrast is when you have a really light thing next to a really dark thing, and both of them just complement each other and draw the eye in. So that's what I mean by contrast. Another tip to create fine lines is to use your pencil on its tip, whereas if you want to create like a more shading effect, you can use the pencil on its side. The tip will create lines, whereas the side will create a nice gradient effect. And I've gone into the corners to create some shadows. And there you have it. This is the finished piece. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, leave a comment. If you like this video or learned something, give it a like, and then subscribe if you want to see more. Thanks for watching.